A man is taking a shower upstairs, unaware that his wife is being attacked by burglars downstairs. At that moment, he remains completely oblivious to the danger. When he comes downstairs, he finds his wife lying in a pool of blood, and the sight drives him instantly mad with grief. As he rushes closer to his wife to try and help, a sudden blinding spray assaults him out of nowhere. In the final moment before he loses consciousness, the man sees the murderer arrogantly making a hand gesture at him. When he wakes up, he finds himself clutching a blood-stained fruit knife, and his wife's lifeless body is lying beside him. Just then, the police burst into the house and swiftly subdue him. The man is dragged into prison against his will. As he sits in his cell, the scene of his wife's murder replays in his mind over and over again. Anger and pain intertwine, igniting a burning rage within him. The tattoos on his body shimmer faintly, as if foreshadowing a bloody revenge that is about to unfold. But life in prison is like hell on earth. The guards show no mercy, blasting him with freezing cold water from high-pressure hoses. Then they cruelly sprinkle disinfectant powder all over him. Yet none of this seems to shake his resolve for vengeance. After being taken to his cell, the man quickly realizes that his cellmates are far from friendly. A burly man stares at him and immediately flashes a sinister smile. The cellmate on the upper bunk has a cold, piercing gaze, as if ready to devour him at any moment. The tense atmosphere in the cell quickly escalates into a boiling point of violence. When a guard walks in with a mocking grin, he discovers that their carefully planned arrangement has already turned into a complete joke. This prison, known as Hell's Island, is notorious for housing a collection of the most ruthless criminals imaginable. Each inmate has stained their hands with blood, and brutality and violence are everywhere. One day, while Jensen is quietly eating his meal, a bald inmate brazenly sits down in front of him. Without a word, the inmate spits directly into Jensen's food. Faced with such blatant provocation from the prison bully, Jensen's rage erupts instantly. Without hesitation, he punches the bully hard, knocking him to the ground. As the situation spirals out of control, the guards quickly intervene. They haul Jensen to the warden's office. To Jensen's surprise, the warden doesn't reprimand him. Instead, she commends his quick reaction. The warden reveals that she knows Jensen was once a star in the racing world. This prison, in fact, is a kingdom of extreme car racing secretly controlled by the warden. She not only organizes deadly car races but also earns massive wealth by broadcasting them live. The rules of the races are simple yet brutal. Contestants must fight tooth and nail to race forward while battling for survival at every turn. The legendary racer Frankenstein once dominated these races, winning 4 times, but he tragically died in a horrific accident on the track. Frankenstein left behind a record of 4 victories. Now, the warden decides to make Jensen the new Frankenstein. If Jensen can win the 5th race, he will earn his freedom. Determined to uncover the truth behind his wife's murder, Jensen has no choice but to accept the deal. After joining the racing team, Jensen quickly adapts to the racing rhythm under the guidance of his coach. He also learns the race's deadly rules. In the first 3 rounds, he must not only outpace his rivals but also survive to the finish line. The final round, however, is the ultimate showdown of speed and fury. Whoever crosses the finish line first will be crowned the ultimate champion. However, behind the scenes of the race, Jensen begins to notice some unusual details. He observes that a group of people are wearing wristbands eerily similar to items linked to his wife's case. This raises intense suspicion within him. He starts to suspect that his wife's death might be intricately connected to the race and the prison's shady dealings. But for now, he has no choice but to keep racing, waiting for the right moment to uncover the truth. And so, the first round of the deadly competition begins. A black armored vehicle slowly rolls onto the prison racetrack. When its doors open, several women dressed in sleek combat suits step out swiftly. Their sharp gazes lock onto the track, revealing their role as navigators for the racers. At that moment, all eyes suddenly focus on a single figure. A girl in black emerges, the exclusive navigator of the late Frankenstein. As she gets into the car, her heart tightens abruptly. Sitting beside her isn't the familiar Frankenstein but an unfamiliar man. Before she can ask any questions, the man decisively removes his mask, revealing a cold bald head and piercing eyes. The aura he exudes is even more intimidating than Frankenstein's ever was. Case feels her heart sink. She realizes that the dynamics of this deadly race are becoming increasingly complicated. Meanwhile, inside the prison's broadcast studio, the warden stands before a massive screen as the global live stream prepares to begin. Millions of viewers are waiting with bated breath. The final 3 days of deadly racing officially kick off at this moment. Although each race lasts only 10 minutes, Ticket prices are set at a staggering $1,999. The deluxe package goes for an astronomical $3,999, with Frankenstein having disappeared for 6 months and now suddenly making his return. A frenzy of ticket sales ensues. Orders skyrocket to an astonishing 180 million. Seeing the overwhelming response, the Warden's lips curl into a cold smirk. In her mind, she has already calculated that this venture will bring her a guaranteed fortune. With the sound of the starting signal, 9 war vehicles roared off the line. Jensen, relying on his extraordinary driving skills, quickly took the lead, while Pachenko desperately accelerated in an attempt to overtake him. However, Case decisively directed Jensen to take a side lane, skillfully avoiding a dangerous collision. But that was just the beginning. Moments later, Jensen slammed the gas pedal and executed a perfect drift, regaining his lead once again. Joe, enraged, stepped hard on the accelerator, forcing Jensen off the track. Fortunately, Jensen's exceptional driving skills allowed him to quickly stabilize the car. Not only did he avoid falling behind, but he also launched a fierce counterattack. As the race entered the second lap, the tension escalated. At this moment, the Warden activated the track's weapon system. Swords and shields sprang into action, turning the entire course into a death trap. Seeing this, the other drivers hurriedly activated their own weapons. Joe set up a heavy machine gun, unleashing a storm of bullets across the track like torrential rain. Meanwhile, the skull traps on the course were triggered. Any vehicle caught in them would be instantly eliminated. As the situation grew increasingly heated, Joe showed no mercy. He began wildly firing, attempting to suppress his rivals with overwhelming firepower. Grim, on the other hand, spilled slick oil across the track, trying to slow down the other drivers. However, Joe made a critical mistake, causing his tires to skid and his car to lose control, eventually grinding to a halt. Grim also met his demise when his rear tires were punctured by steel spikes, sending his car tumbling. Moments later, a rocket struck his vehicle with pinpoint accuracy, eliminating him on the spot. In just a few minutes, 2 formidable opponents were taken out of the race. By now, the race's viewership ratings had skyrocketed, far exceeding the Warden's expectations. Meanwhile, Jensen's car had reached its maximum speed. Despite the relentless onslaught of attacks, he showed no signs of backing down. Instead, he decisively activated fleet mode, bracing for even more intense challenges. But just then, Jensen's Gatling gun system on the front of his car malfunctioned. In the critical moment, Case quickly unbuckled her seatbelt, climbed out of the car, and scrambled to fix the gun. Just as she finished the repair, a barrage of heavy gunfire erupted from behind her without warning. Jensen immediately activated the vehicle's shields, barely managing to block the first wave of the attack. The relentless gunfire from the enemy continued, escalating the danger on the track. As the situation grew increasingly dire, Jensen quickly decided to use the petrol bombs. However, Case warned him that the car's internal pipelines had already malfunctioned, making even the smoke grenades inoperable. With the situation spiraling out of control, Jensen decisively unlocked the petrol bombs and pulled Case to his side. Activating the passenger seat's ejector system, a fuel canister was catapulted into the air and exploded upon impact with the enemy car behind them. As their opponents realized the impending disaster, Case unexpectedly climbed out of the car again.
Merry Christmas! Oh.
Relieved for just a moment, Jensen's tension spiked when another racer suddenly rushed toward him and made a hand gesture that sent chills down his spine. It was the same gesture made by the killer during his wife's murder. Before Jensen could react, Joe rammed his vehicle with full force, sending both Jensen and his car flying toward the side of the track. Barely managing to stay in the race, Jensen advanced to the second round by a razor-thin margin. Now, Jensen began suspecting that the Warden was connected to his wife's death. He decided to quit the competition. However, the Warden threatened his daughter's safety, forcing him to continue racing. When Jensen finally confronted the man who made the gesture, he was shocked to uncover the truth. His wife's death was part of the Warden's elaborate scheme to coerce him into replacing Frankenstein in the races. To ensure his daughter's safety, Jensen had no choice but to face even deadlier challenges. The second deadly race began shortly thereafter. In the face of this insane competition, Jensen's sole focus was on avenging his wife. Winning the race meant nothing to him anymore. The only thing that mattered was exposing the truth behind it all. However, the chaos of the first stage soon made him realize that things were far more complicated than they seemed. and there had to be a puppet master pulling the strings. As Jensen slowly unraveled the mystery, Case finally confessed her betrayal. She admitted that she had been bribed by the Warden to sabotage Frankenstein's weapon systems in exchange for her freedom. Jensen instantly realized he was nothing more than a pawn in the Warden's game. The feelings of anger and betrayal ignited a blazing fury within him. He resolved to fight back and take justice into his own hands. Jensen commanded Case to continue sowing chaos but made it clear he would not remain idle. Returning to the track, he executed a ruthless maneuver, drifting sharply to force Joe's car to a stop. At that moment, Jensen had only one goal: to eliminate the person who had destroyed his family. The two vehicles engaged in a fierce duel. Jensen used a smoke grenade to disorient Pachenko, causing him to lose control and crash into a concrete barrier. As the crash unfolded, Jensen calmly stepped out of his vehicle and swiftly ended Pachenko's life. The entire sequence was captured live on camera. Jensen coldly issued a challenge to the Warden, his words laced with defiance. As the tension reached its peak, a deafening roar suddenly echoed through the air. A massive war vehicle stormed onto the track, prompting the Warden to immediately order an all-out attack. Torrents of gunfire rained down like a storm, transforming the track into a living hell. Other drivers, realizing the imminent danger, scrambled to flee, but there was nowhere to escape. The Warden's insane plan had trapped them all in a deadly no-win scenario. Now, only Jensen and Joe remained on the track. It became clear that if they didn't work together, there would be no way to survive the death trap ahead. Jensen quickly contacted Joe, proposing an alliance to fight back. Joe, accustomed to working alone, hesitated, but faced with a life-or-death crisis, he had no other choice. The only way out was to join forces. As a relentless barrage of fire rained down, the two men sped directly toward the monstrous steel war machine. Despite the overwhelming firepower, neither flinched, their resolve unshaken. At the critical moment, the pair managed to precisely detonate a skull trap, triggering a massive explosion that engulfed the steel behemoth. The second stage of the race came to a fiery conclusion. Later, Joe visited Jensen in the repair garage and casually tossed him a wrench. Jensen reacted instantly, catching it with ease. Joe stood stunned. Such reflexes were something even the best drivers might struggle to achieve. Could Jensen really be the legendary Frankenstein? He fixed his icy gaze on the Warden standing high above the track, his eyes burning with the fire of revenge. Unbeknownst to Jensen, the Warden was also scheming, planning to eliminate him and replace him with a driver she could fully control. As the final race of life and death approached, Jensen began to realize that simply winning the race would not be enough to escape this lethal trap. What he didn't know was that the Warden had already planted a bomb beneath his car, preparing to deliver a fatal blow at the critical moment. Meanwhile, Jensen's coach spotted a critical clue from the live broadcast. The bridge hidden behind the billboard was the only escape route to freedom. Realizing this, the coach immediately ordered an increase in fuel reserves, preparing for a counterattack. Jensen and Joe had a final exchange, fully aware that this race was not just about speed, it was a fight for survival. Determined to find a way out, Jensen decided not to chase first place but to search for an opportunity to escape. As the third round began, Joe loaded his car with rockets, ready to escalate the chaos to its peak. When the green light flashed, the cars roared off the line like wild beasts. Just as Jensen accelerated, his car's ignition system was remotely disabled. Joe followed closely behind. The Warden's scheme quickly became apparent as Jensen's car was locked into a target mode. Jensen pushed forward with all his might toward the protective shield ahead, but the remote system cut off its connection. As the shield was about to collapse, Joe suddenly fired 5 rockets, hitting the billboard with pinpoint accuracy. The fiery explosion lit up the entire track. With the path cleared, both cars charged out in quick succession, igniting a frenzy among the audience. The online viewership skyrocketed to 70 million in that instant. The Warden, stunned by the turn of events, realized she had completely lost control. In a panic, she ordered a full-scale pursuit. Furious, she pressed the detonator button to trigger the bomb under Jensen's car, only to discover it had already been disarmed. Enraged, she smashed the remote control and immediately deployed helicopters to chase after them. Jensen became the primary target of the pursuit, but instead of panicking, he decided to act as bait to buy time. Faced with relentless gunfire from the helicopters, Jensen was nearly cornered, but he had a plan. Knowing that Case had already signed her release agreement and would soon be free, he leaped out of the car and made his escape. Case quickly took over the driver's seat, steering the car until it ran out of fuel. Eventually, Jensen and Joe regrouped and escaped capture by boarding a speeding train. Joe expressed his intent to head to Miami, while Jensen focused on reuniting with his lost daughter. Joe couldn't help but grumble about not getting the chance to take down the Warden, but Jensen had already planned everything. As the race's popularity continued to climb, the Warden received a peculiar package. When she gleefully unwrapped it, her expression turned to utter shock.
I love this game.
Months later, Jensen and Joe settled in a small town in Mexico, opening an auto repair shop. Just as they thought life had finally quieted down, a speeding Ford Mustang skidded to a halt outside. Stepping out of the car was a familiar figure, none other than the stunningly gorgeous navigator, Tace. I'm a movie enthusiast. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you next time.